Hi, my name is Pam Denny. I'm the designer and architect of the Maximo BI or Business Intelligence tools. In today's demo, we're going to do an overview of the Maximo 7.6 Ad Hoc or QBR functionality. This functionality enables you to create powerful individual reports on the fly, and this can significantly reduce the number of custom reports you need to create and maintain. As I mentioned, this is an overview of the ad hoc reporting functionality. Ad hoc reporting was introduced over 7 years ago with the initial Maximo 7.1 release, and since that time, its features have significantly grown per our clients' requests to add features like multiple object selection, editing capability, and in the current Maximo 7.6 release, features like summaries and calculations. There are many demos today on the Maximo 7.6 Report Wiki site that highlight specifically some of those new features like summaries and calculations, but the demo today is going to take a step back. We'll take each one of the tabs in the ad hoc dialog step by step, review the fields, review the business rules, so you thoroughly understand the functionality. If you thoroughly understand it, we believe you can maximize your use of it and again reduce the number of custom reports that you need to create and maintain. Additionally, I'll be referring to a spreadsheet that will be made available to you, and the spreadsheet is set up like a workbook. Each page has a corresponding, Each worksheet page corresponds to a tab of the QBR dialog, so you can review again the buttons, the actions, the business rules related to each, and then there's some additional information on editing and security. So today, let's start with a Style tab and look at that in detail. So to do that, I'm going to come over here to Work Order Tracking. And in Work Order Tracking, I'm simply going to select the Create Report action, and it brings up the dialog. This is the 5 tabs, but what I'm going to talk about today in this demo is the Style tab. Anyone who has access to create a report has access to the Style tab. It's made up of a number of key components. First is the report style. You have 2 options, a list and a detail report. A list report is simply a listing of the selected attributes, and a detail report will take those attributes but break them up in relation to what we call subreports. Subreports are based on the object relationships to its child. So for example, in work order, I can have a one-to-one relationship between work order and asset. That means there's one asset for every work order. But I could also have a one-to-N or one-to-many relationship between work order and planned labor. And if I do that, I'm going to be forced to select a detail report if I don't. There may be some applications where you don't have the ability to switch between a list and a detail report. And let me show that and explain why that occurs. So if I come over here to meters, for example, and I'll wait for this to display, and I select Create Report, notice that the buttons are grayed out. I can't switch between a list and a detail. The reason that occurs is there is no multiple objects available for this application. There's only the parent object that I can select my fields from. This could occur for 2 reasons. First, there might not be a report object structure created for this individual application. Or secondly, I may not have security access to the report object structures. There may be a set of your security groups that you don't want them to select from multiple objects. You only want them to have access for the main object, so in that case they are not able to switch between a list and a detail report. Well, let's go back here to Work Order Tracking. And this time I'm going to put a filter here so we can get some information very quickly. And let's filter on location BR, and what do we get? About 119 records. So let me create a report. And now let's go back and see what a list report looks like. Let me just leave it as is, and now I click preview. When I do that, it's going to take my persistent application list tab fields and bring them over to the report viewer or the BERT viewer, and I'm going to see those in a list format. There's all the information. And again, if I went to the very last page, I should see a count of the number of records that I have, which is 119. It matches the 119 here, and here's the where clause that I have. So let me come back over here so you can see what I'm doing. Now let me switch it to detail report, and now I'm going to click preview. I'm going to come back here to the report viewer. It's going to come back and it should show me exactly the same thing. And the reason why is because I haven't added any other objects to my query or my report. I'm still in that base content. So let's go to the content and let's force it to use different styles, or excuse me, force it to add some additional content. I'm going to come down here to plan labor, and I'm just going to quickly, when that field refreshes to plan labor, oops, did I select it? I don't think I selected it. It's going to come over here and switch from 115.3 records to 17. I'll add crew, and to show you that I've added it, switch over here to the second page. Now I know that planned labor has a one-to-many relationship to work order detail, so when I click preview, now we're expecting the style to change, and as it changes, here it comes. The format, as you can see, is significantly different. It breaks it up by individual work order, and there is a page break between each work order that I had selected. Now, some people may or may not like that, so let me show you a few other things. Let me cancel out of this dialog and let's start again, because what I want to show you here is what happens if I leave that list report as is, and now I didn't change it to detail report. I come down here to plan labor and I start building my content. It gives me that message saying that you can go ahead and add fields from the parent to the child object, but it's going to change it to a type detail right over here. It's going to change it to type detail. I select OK. And so now when I come back to style, it's at the detail report. It doesn't let me change it to list. It says I have to leave it at summary. Okay? So let me cancel out of that, leave it as detail, and come out. Now sometimes what I hear from people is, my users, they don't know which one of these objects is a one-to-one relationship and which is a one-to-many. How does that come into play? Well, that all comes into play with our report object structure application, or the integration object structure application. Now, the end users are not going to have access to this. Your power users and your business users most likely will not have access to this also. So let's come over here and let's bring up that object structure that we were working with in work order tracking. So here it is here, work order details with actuals and plans. So again, imagine you have a number of users that are saying, I don't know which of these objects in these listings have single, multiple relationships. I don't understand any of that. Well, when you created this report object structure, or when somebody did, or whatever, how it ever came into play, you have the ability to modify the reporting description. This is what shows to that user. So maybe you want to say here, maybe say this is a detail report, detail style report. So what this is going to signify to the user is, okay, if I come in here and I use plan labor, it's going to force me to have a detail style report. And I could continue that with any of the other ones that I have. So for example, let's go over here to plan materials after this saves. Excuse me. Let's see. I lost my place here. Oh, it took me all the way to the end. Excuse me. I don't know why that happened. But let's come over here. Let's just grab another one for the heck of it. And let's say it's labor transaction, right? Actual labor. Oh, this is a good one too. So as I come here, actual labor, and I'm going to call that, oops, come on. It's being fussy for me. Detail report type. And now I'm going to save that. So after he saves, let's go back to work order tracking, and let's see if this would make it easier for our user to understand. Again, we're trying to maximize their use, minimize the calls that they make to you, make them self-sufficient so they can create these on their own. So I come here to create report, and now I'm going to leave that in. Imagine I'm the user, I'm buzzing along, and I want to just have a list of data, and I come down here and it says plan labor, detail style report. Oh gosh, so now I know that if I'm selecting an attribute from here, it's going to force me into that detail format, and that may impact my decision if I use that field or not. So again, you can modify the text here that displays to that user via the report object structure to make it more intuitive and to help him as he creates that. Let's look at a couple other things here. I think this next field is one of the most important fields that the user can make, and that is applying the application query. In the prior releases, prior to 7.6, it was actually on the Content tab, and it was called Apply the Current and Application Query to the Report. Very long text. We've simplified it, moved it front and center right here to the Style tab, and it basically says when you click Preview, am I taking that application query and the filter that I have, and am I going to apply it to the report? So in this case, I enter my value, I left the default as is, and if I click here on the bottom, this is the application query that I have. How do I know that? If I click cancel, let's look at our application. Let's look at our where clause. This same where clause is what I'm seeing over here in the BERT report. And we want to have it exposed to you in the saved where clause section so the user knows as he built this content and he executes it, say next week, next month, next year, it's available to him. If I came in, and let's leave that there, but now let's create the report, and now let's take off that flag, and let's start to see what happens. Now when I execute the report, my report viewer is going to, again, execute another transient report in this case. And now I have, clicking on the last page, I now just have my runtime clause. This is what I applied when I actually executed that report. If I came in here and maybe I didn't have, I was in a rush and I came here and I'm in work order tracking, take off that filter, all my records, now I have 1,809 records. Click Create Report. I'm really busy. Preview my report. In this case, I should see that total value, 1,809 records, everything, because I am not actually saving anything to the ad hoc report. So now I have 46 records. There's nothing here. Let's save this so you know what it looks like. This is saved. No, oops, take that off. Saved, no application query. And let's run that and save that. And the reason I want to show you this is what you can see how you can see the difference of these in the application and also in report administration. So let that go a minute. Also remember, when you run and save a report here, it's going to take longer than when you preview. The reason it takes longer is because we're actually saving that report design to the database. We need to save it to the database so we can execute it at a future time, and also so you could edit it at a future time. So here's our save no application query. Let's bring up my work orders and BR, and now let's create a report. Let's enable that application query, and say saved application query. And let's click run and save. Again, that's going to take a little bit. And let's let that execute. Alrighty. So now this is less number of records. Let's go back here. Let me show you what these look like in report administration, why these are very important. When I come to report admin, as a hint, if I want to find the ad hoc reports that have been created, I just come over here and I filter on the created by field. Here's our save no application query. As an administrator, I see this and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's this user doing? He's not applying any where clause to his report. So what would I do right away? I'd probably put in a limit record here and I'd say, hey, this can't go against more than 200 records. Or, oops, type what I have to say here. Sorry about that. So I would definitely put in a limit record there, because otherwise he's going to cause performance havoc, or potential performance havoc. And now this is the other one where my user did save the application query. He did what I wanted him to do, and I can see all the information right in here, so I don't have to worry as much about setting the limit records, because he did what I really needed him to do, again, to maintain performance of the system. So that's an overview of the application query, and again, it's really, really important that you utilize that. And in the dialog, or the spreadsheet here, talks about that, what happens with the filters when and when they're not enabled, and you can see some additional details on that. A couple other things that I want to highlight about this first dialog here with our Style tab is, in addition to this, is your title. You know, this is my report. If everybody starts putting my report as a title, you're not going to be able to distinguish them from one another. So encourage your users, when they're creating an ad hoc report, to give it a name that is recognizable to them, potentially recognizable to other people who may share it. So this is, let me put a filter on here so maybe I can give it a better title. BR location Whopper. And now when I create my report, I'm going to say, you know, site Bedford, BR location Whopper, work orders. So it's much, much more prevalent. I don't have to have the title when I'm previewing a report. I typically don't name it to the end, because oftentimes when I'm creating a report, I'm not really sure what the title is, and I want to be able to modify that. If I don't enter a title and I want to save it, it should give me an error. It says give it a name. See, a value is requested in the title field. But again, if I'm previewing it, you don't need it, because again, preview is transient. I'm not keeping that file. I'm just tossing it away. I'm building up the content. So let me put this in here again. Site Bedford, BR location Whopper, work orders. Sharing is if you want other people to have access to the report you create. This gives access to the Everyone security group, so anyone who has run reports and access to the work order tracking application would see it. If you don't enable it, it's for you only. If you enable it, it's for you only. Let's do that right now. Let's run that. So what I can then do as the administrator is I could grant individual security group access, maybe not necessarily to the Everyone security group. So maybe I'm creating this report for myself, excuse me, and a set of managers. Then I could go ahead and enable that. So let's let that go. It's over here. So now when I come here and report administration, let's bring up those reports, created by, filter there, this one here. So I didn't grant security access, so when I look at it, nobody has access to it, only myself who created it. So say I do want to give it access to, let's say, Ops Manager. This list is going to show all the security groups that have report access to work order tracking, and now I save it, and now those people would have access to that field, or excuse me, that field, that report. If, on the other hand, I came in and created a report and share, and let's call it public, and now I save that. So what I want to do here is, again, I'm giving public access to this report. So I just want to show you the difference in report admin on the security group setting that you'll see, because that'll give access to the everyone security group. Let's give that a minute to execute. And again, when we do anything that we save, it's just going to take a little bit longer. And the reason it takes longer is we need to save it to the database. Report administration. Created by. Here's my public. So again, when I go to security here for public, it's granted everyone. So anybody who has access to run report in the work order tracking application can see my report. They can't edit it, but they can see and run it. And the other one that I did here, I did not grant public security access. So if I wanted anybody else to have access, I'd have to explicitly grant it in the report administration application. So let me close out today's demo and talk about the last fields that we have in our create report functionality. And that's on the bottom. These are on the bottom on each one of the tabs. Cancel, run completed. Let me try that again. Cancel, run and save completed report, and preview. Again, as I navigate through the tabs. And basically what they do, cancel will cancel my dialog as my page displays here. Let's cancel the dialog. Boom, I've lost everything that I may have had. It just closes it out. Maybe I changed my mind. Maybe I got busy with something else. Run and save completed report. We move that to the middle here because basically this is the very last step. We expect a lot more people to be continuously previewing your report. You preview a report, you build up the content. This is what we call the transient report. And this is what the ad hoc preview limits is set up for. The preview limits is set up that if I had, say a limit of 500 records, when I'm previewing, I must always be under that 500 record limit. So I continuously build up through preview and run and let me try that again. Run and save completed report, that button there. I only need to have a title when I choose this, and this means my report is complete. I like it. I'm good to go. And then I click that button, report executes, saves to the database, and I'm all set. So after that goes, again, I just want to recap a couple of quick things that we talked about with the Style tab in Ad Hoc reporting. Going to let this browser refresh with my content here. Here's the report I just created with my fancy name. So again, when we come to create report, on the Style tab, everyone has access to this Style tab who has the create report functionality. Two types of styles to choose from, list and detail. Some applications, there is no selection because there's no report object structure available or the security hasn't been set. We talked about how objects, depending on if they have one-to-one or one-to-many relationships, can impact what type of style you use. And I showed you in report object structures how you can change the title to indicate to the user that it might be a detail object. Then we reviewed the application query, the title, the share, and the 3 buttons here. Also, I just want to highlight this spreadsheet. Again, that reviews the business rules for each one of the tabs. So thank you very much for your time.